From the heart of the Space City to the heart of Gen Z, welcome to Next Gen Conversation. Not Dad's Talk Radio. Ethan talks to you about the issues and events that matter to our generation. This is the Next Gen Report with Ethan Buchanan.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. How are we? And welcome to the Next Gen Report Tuesday evening live. I am super excited about this episode, about this installment, because as you can see, if you're actually watching right now and not just listening to the podcast or the radio broadcast or wherever you're just listening, if you're watching right now, you can probably see I'm in a new studio. Super excited about that. Put a whole lot of effort into this. So I want to ask, let me know what you think. Sound off in the comments if you're watching right now. The live chat is open. I'm looking at it. I welcome feedback. Let me know what you think of my new fancy wood paneling and my new fancy lighting that I got. I put a whole lot of effort into this. And so I would love to hear from you. I can still kind of make some adjustments and some tweaks. Nothing is set too firmly in stone. So if there's something that you think, hey, that looks terrible, by all means, let me know. Let me know. I also want to hear, how was your 4th of July? Obviously, this was the 250th. That's a big deal. Countries don't turn 250 years old all the time. I had a great 4th of July. I have all my fingers, so that's really all that I was looking for out of 4th of July was to, have all my digits by the 5th of July, and I achieved that. So I'm happy. I would love to know how yours was. Let me know. Just drop a quick little comment. All right, obviously we've got quite a bit to talk about. I've been out for a while because I was moving, so that kind of complicated things. I have not been able to put out as much content as I would like. I apologize for that. I've been slacking on the old TikTok and whatnot. I have not been able to do it with the move, but things should be getting back to normal right now. So one of the first things I want to talk about is the new Christopher Nolan Odyssey movie. And I've talked about movies a handful of times, and this is one movie that I'm very confident in just not being at all interested in. And the reason for this is I actually really love the Odyssey book. I used to read a kind of condensed, abridged version of the Iliad and the Odyssey all the time. It really is one of, I think, the coolest stories in all of human history, which is probably one of, if not the reason it's managed to last so long. And so I enjoy the story. Because I enjoy the story so much, I don't want to watch something that I know is going to ruin it. And I know it's going to ruin it. So I would just rather kind of preserve the happy memories that I have of the Odyssey rather than endure the woke-washed version that we're going to get from Christopher Nolan. And it is going to be a woke-washed version. I hate to throw that out there before the movie actually comes out and I have a chance to see it for myself. I don't like to dogpile onto films when they're good or bad, but I can tell just from what we've seen so far from the press tours and who they've cast and where they've cast them, I know this is going to be a woke washing. And we've already had members of the cast come out and basically say this without saying it. Here is the Fox News article that I think really gives this all away. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey gets overwhelmingly negative reactions after controversial casting choices. Lupita Nyong'o, cast as Helen of Troy, publicly criticized the 2,800-year-old piece's treatment of women during the promo tour. Now, we see this all the time from movies that have kind of gone woke. They try to blame the fact that you don't like the fact that they've gone woke for the movie failing. They just try to get out ahead of it. Oh, this movie didn't do poorly because it's not very good. This movie did poorly because you're not ready for a female-led film. And they'll go out and they'll say this 2 weeks before the movie comes out. It's like, okay, so you've just made a bad film and now you're trying to cover your tracks. This is exactly what we've seen from the Christopher Nolan Odyssey movie. When Christopher Nolan announced he'd be making an adaptation of The Odyssey as his latest project, film fans were generally thrilled. Nolan, for his directorial or writing faults, is an exceptionally talented technical filmmaker and seemed tailor-made to bring the ancient Greece and legendary story to life. Matt Damon was cast as Odysseus, the lead character, whose hero's journey became the basis of storytelling for thousands of years to come. While Damon isn't Greek, it was generally an inoffensive choice. Much of the rest of the casting could not have been worse, and while Odyssey is still likely to be a financial success, judging by the reaction to the latest final trailer that hit the internet recently, it's decisions like these clear that audience are not thrilled. They boogered that writing, I think, with what Nolan's done with a foundational and beloved story. And I'll be honest, most of the casting fuss has been around Lupita Nyong'o, or however you pronounce her name. I know I'm butchering it. I don't care. This woman was a terrible choice for a lot of reasons. One, she doesn't even slightly fit the description of the character that Homer does give us in the Odyssey. Two, she hasn't read the book. And three, she clearly doesn't like the story very much, which is all recipes for failure. And I'll prove it to you. This is the video that made the rounds recently on Twitter, went super mega viral, and has a lot of people kind of writing off the movie in advance. Take a listen to what she has to say about what is one of, if not the most, iconic pieces of fiction in all of human history.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spent with them? Oh, okay.
And then do you lean forward and look at him like that?
Yes, like, remember us? I'd be like,
remember us? Remember the women? How do you feel about all the screen time we're getting? Because you didn't give us screen time in the books. Women were written off in the book. But if you've actually read The Odyssey, which she admittedly hasn't, you would know that actually women are key players constantly throughout the story. If not the actual goddesses that make various appearances in the story, then Odysseus' wife, who is a model of resilience, but that doesn't actually matter. We need to go and work woke virtue signal so that we have an excuse when the movie fails because we did too much woke virtue signaling. That's what's going on here. So I'm not going to go see this movie. At least I'm not going to pay for it. I might watch it later when it comes out on streaming, but I'm not overly excited. All right, we'll be right back. We got a lot more. Stay tuned. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Next Gen Report Tuesday evening live. Thank you for holding with me through that quick little break. We are cutting this for the podcast and radio, so there's going to be some breaks and pauses throughout the live stream this evening. That might feel a little awkward. That might feel a little bit jumpy if you're just used to watching live streams. If you're used to listening to the radio, it'll be completely normal. You get this stuff all the time. So I apologize in advance if it's weird or different for you. That's how we got to do it here, unfortunately. All right. We're going to talk about a couple of more important things than Christopher Nolan, but I do want you, by all means, hop in the chat. Let me know if you actually plan to watch The Odyssey. Because on the one hand, Christopher Nolan is a very good, technically savvy filmmaker. He does make stuff that visually looks pretty impressive. On the other hand, The Odyssey is obviously going to be woke-washed garbage, so I'm not going to go see it, even though I do love technically impressive filmmaking. Let me know what you think. Are you going to go watch it? Are you not going to go watch it? By all means, give me your thoughts. And now, real quick, before we get to the actual important stuff, I want to ask you, if you enjoyed the last segment, if you're sticking around because you're interested to see more, while you're at it, I want to ask you to support my show sponsor, Deus Vult lapel pins. These are fantastic products. I'm wearing one right now. I always wear one. If you're a fan of the show, you know this. You've seen me time and time again wearing the Deus Vult lapel pins. They've got a fantastic collection. They've got new stuff coming out all the time. They've got a bunch of brand new stuff on the website right now that's already sold out. So get back on that wait list so that the next time it comes back into stock, you don't miss out. DeusVoltLapelPins.com. They've got more than just lapel pins. They've got ties. They've got even auto decals, anything you could possibly want to represent your pride in America, your Christian faith, whatever your particular heritage is. They've got pins for that too. So just check them out. If you find something you like, use promo code NEXTPIN2026. That just tells them that I sent you. It helps me out. All right, now moving on. We have something that's going on in Cambridge that I think is very interesting, and it involves a piece of technology that I had actually not heard of until recently, and it's the shot spotter. It's my understanding that the shot spotter is essentially a piece of technology that's used by police officers to use audio to detect gunshots. So that can help them, I guess, deploy faster, is my understanding. If there's a shooting, they can maybe find out about it before someone calls 911 if there's not a cop within earshot, but one of these shot spotters is. That will alert the police, hey, there's a shooting going on here. Y'all need to go respond. Seems like a great piece of technology. I know a lot of people are super scared of the surveillance state. That's fair. But I think this makes sense, especially in like urban areas. If you're in the country, you probably don't need this. People are going to be shooting all the time, and that's just because you're in the country and you can shoot a gun there. But if you're in the city where you can't just whenever you want to pop off a gun safely, this seems like a good piece of technology. But it has been completely repealed in the city of Cambridge. Cambridge City Council votes to end shot spotter use amid privacy and accuracy concerns. This is according to the Harvard Crimson. Cambridge City Council narrowly voted on Monday to end the city's use of Shot Spotter, a gunshot detection system that has drawn years of criticism from residents and councilors over privacy concerns and potential data sharing with federal authorities. The policy order, which passed in a 5-2-2 vote, directs city manager Yi An Huang 05, I don't know what that means, to remove and disable shot spotter devices across Cambridge within 90 days of signing the measure. Now, the thing that they put out and cite here is, privacy and safety concerns. And like I said, that's all valid. Obviously, if you're not doing anything wrong, we don't want to infringe on your privacy. That's what they say the issue was. Turns out the actual issue was ye olde racisms. And what I mean by that is the shot spotter system was leading to a lot of arrests of black and brown people. And so the woke folk got upset about that. Now, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This isn't just me saying that. The activists who pushed for the shot spotter to be removed were openly saying this at the Cambridge City Council meetings when they were calling for it to be removed. Take a listen.
I do not consent for my vulnerable neighbors in our welcome community sanctuary city to be at risk.
And to make sure we hear from neighbors more directly impacted than I am, I will also be sharing a recorded note from a Putnam Gardens resident. He's unable to be here, but feels that ShotSpotter surveillance puts him and his family at risk.
En la última audiencia, los residentes hablaron abrumadormente
And of course he doesn't speak
de
English.
ShotSpotter. ¿Saben por qué? Porque las familias
And this puts black and brown communities in Cambridge in very real danger.
That BIPOC members of the Cambridge community are more likely to be recorded by ShotSpotter and thus are more vulnerable to potential abuses of the data and recordings collected by the company, as well as dangerous over-policing.
Okay, so just so we're all on the same page, this is a piece of technology that listens for gunshots and alerts the police when it hears one. And these people are all complaining because black and brown people are more vulnerable to it, I guess. I want you to think through the implications of that. What these woke people are saying. How about let's not concern ourselves with making sure we're not arresting black and brown people who, according to these own woke people, are apparently going out and shooting guns in places they shouldn't, which is a crime. It should be illegal. Anyone who's not being safe, who's just recklessly discharging a firearm, should be stopped. They should be arrested, regardless of race. So if there's one group of people that's doing it more, I don't care. Everyone who's doing it, arrest them. But these people care. Gun violence is important to the woke left right up until it means black and brown people get arrested for gun violence. That's where they draw the line. All of a sudden, it's not important anymore. That's not me saying that. That's them saying that. You heard it. I played it.
Surveillance does not equal safety. We do not need microphones on top of buildings listening to every loud noise in the vicinity and sending in police in order to be safe.
I do not consent.
That's these people's gripe. Listening to every loud noise. A gunshot is you can tell. I've heard a lot of gunshots. I've never heard a loud noise and thought, oh, that might or might not be a gunshot. But basically, the main point here is they care about safety. They care about law enforcement. They care about, protecting people from gun violence right up until it, gets inconvenient for their demographics and statistics. Right up until you realize, oh, the people that are getting arrested for, shooting guns in the middle of the city are, not the right color. That's when the left loses their mind and never mind, we have to get rid of this. Now, shock of shocks, when you make that your law enforcement policy, there are casualties. And there have been casualties. CBS News, a grieving family is seeking justice after the shooting death of a beloved and valued Cambridge, Massachusetts DPW worker, while Cambridge police unions say the tragedy could have been prevented if gunshot detection systems were still in place. I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, this is not rocket surgery, people. We have a powerful law enforcement tool. Let's use it. Let's not sit here and make sure that our policing racial statistics are exactly how the left wants it. Let's just make sure we're keeping people safe. And everyone will benefit from that. The entire community. There will be less crime. There will be less murder. There will be less violence. Hypothetically speaking, less black and brown people will be killed, which the left claims to want more than anything else in the world. But God forbid we arrest a few people that are the wrong color in order to, I guess, keep community safe, which, again, the left claims they want this. I don't understand it. We'll be right back. Oh boy. Ladies and gentlemen, you are going to have to forgive me. I am still adjusting to new buttons and the reorganization of where some of the old buttons are. So if I do something silly, like accidentally kill my own live stream in the middle of a broadcast, I apologize. That's what that was. Oopsie daisy. I hit a wrong button. Anyway, moving on. So, if you're just now tuning in, or if you were watching to the first original stream, we were talking about, in the city of Cambridge, these shot detector systems that were originally put up because, we got to stop gun violence, right? And then the people that were getting arrested for the gun violence that was being detected by these gunshot detectors were people of color. And that aggravated the same woke left people who put these cameras up in the first place. And so they have them take them back down. And now a man is dead. What I want to point out to you is, most of the time, whenever there's a particularly egregious case of gun violence, the media will immediately rush to start throwing up videos of the family in tears, the tragedy of the people affected. That's what they want to highlight, la-di-da-di-da, every single time. And this is always done in an effort to then turn around and push more gun control. That's what they want, more gun control. And this time around, we've got this man named Xavier Bautista, who was shot and killed on the 4th of July. And everybody around is saying, hey, we could have stopped this with these shot detectors that we just took down. And lo and behold, we have the video of the affected family members crying, the tears, the whole can of biscuits, usually exactly what the left wants in order to say we need more gun control. And yet it's only showing up on local news, and you have to go digging for it to find it. Normally, these videos are everywhere, but this time around, that's not the case. I want to play this video real quick because I think it really is heart-wrenching. It is exactly the type of stuff that, had circumstances be different, you would see the left using videos like this for political purposes. Check this out.
To know that something could have made any difference. And it sucks to know that my brother was laying on the ground alone for an hour.
Bautista's family and the Cambridge Police Patrol Officers Association are now questioning if the city's removal of ShotSpotter made a tragic difference. The gunfire detection technology had been available where Bautista's body was found before council canceled it 2 months ago.
And it sucks.
So, just so we're all on the same page, this guy was shot within earshot of one of these ShotSpotters, and he lied there dying, presumably, for an hour until he was eventually found dead. Now, if that ShotSpotter had been on, it would have been detected, an ambulance and a police officer would have been sent. They may have been able to save this man's life. But that ShotSpotter wasn't on because a bunch of woke people were afraid that the ShotSpotter being on would lead to black and brown people being arrested for gun violence. This is where we're at. We have now put, racial equity or whatever you want to call it above the safety of literally everyone. The actual real safety of everyone is now less important than racial equity. And I mean, it's worth pointing out here that the guy in question is Hispanic. One of the black or brown lives that they say they're super concerned about, which we should be concerned about, has been lost because the left is more concerned about virtue signaling than actually keeping people safe. Just worth pointing out. Now, speaking of the left, I think it's about time we talk about Graham Platner. Graham Platner, if you don't know, he is a Senate candidate in Maine. He's woke left of the woke lefts. That's why he won his primary, because the Democrats don't elect moderates anymore. They just don't do it. He has had a litany of serious issues come up. And this most recent one, I think, has finally sunk in his career. This is from Politico, and I will warn you now, this is pretty rough stuff, but I think it's worth talking about it because this is who the left puts up at the same time as claiming they're going on this big moral crusade. And this, I think, was a massive political failure from them. This was a unforced error for the Democrat Party, but also it kind of exposes the fact that the Democrat Party really doesn't care as much about, morality as they want you to believe they do. So here it is from Politico. Exclusive. Woman who dated Graham Platner says he sexually assaulted her. A woman who dated Maine U.S. Senate candidate Graham Platner says he forced her to have sex with him nearly 5 years ago, despite her repeated objections, an allegation Platner denies. The woman, a 41-year-old Maine resident named Jenny Rayco, I don't know how that's pronounced, detailed the alleged incident to Politico in 3 interviews over the past 2 weeks. Politico also spoke with a man Rayco dated and confided in the years after the alleged incident, and reviewed documents including emails between Rayco and her therapist and messages between Rayco and an acquaintance whom she warned against getting involved with Platner years before he ran for office. She said she had an on and off relationship with Platner, who is now the Democratic Senate nominee for Maine, more than 2 years before he entered her rural Maine home uninvited one night in late 2021. So this isn't like a long time ago. This isn't like, oh, when you were in college, you got plastered and you were just being crazy, which also is not okay. This is fairly recently. This is only 5 years ago. Deeply intoxicated and forced himself on her while she repeatedly told him to stop. She said she cut off contact with him after telling him the encounter was not consensual. That's pretty crazy. And it seems like it's credible. Now listen, I have a very consistent standard. You're innocent until proven guilty under the law. If what she's alleging is true, then presumably there'll be some, I guess, criminal investigation or something. And if he's found guilty in a court of law, he's guilty. And if he's not, he's not. However, there is a political angle to this. And the political angle here is, in the court of public opinion, you're guilty the moment someone says something. Now, I think that's stupid, but that is the political reality. Now, for his part, Graham Platner is, of course, denying this. Here's his video denial. I'll play you a little bit of it now.
I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false. Over the last 10 months, I have been deeply humbled by the faith Mainers have put in me. You have welcomed me into your homes, into your places of work, into your restaurants, into your houses of worship. You have shown that a different kind of politics, one that puts the interests of people over corporations, is not just possible, but is inevitable. This movement we have built, the largest volunteer base in the history of Maine politics, the hundreds of thousands of grassroots donors, and the supporters across the ideological spectrum, we were united in a love of Maine, a belief that our politics must change, and a focus on defeating Susan Collins.
So, I don't know. There's something to me to the fact that he immediately says, oh no, I pinky promise I didn't do it, and then jumps into platitudes. And listen, he's free to jump into platitudes, but come on, man, you gotta do better. That's not gonna convince anybody, and it hasn't. People across the political spectrum are now calling on him to drop out. So I think this has basically sunk his political career, a political career that, if the Democrats were smart, never would have existed in the first place. Because, again, if you followed politics even loosely, you know this is far from the first time he's run into issues, Graham Platner. I took the liberty of digging up an article that conveniently lays out his long history of these kind of scandals. So here we are, September 2025. Platner faced criticism from conservative pundits over an unearthed column he wrote while in high school, critical of media coverage post 9/11 for not describing the motivations of terrorists or for calling Israel a semi-oppressive state. October 2025, the pace of controversy surrounding Platner kicked up, starting with the unearthing of his deleted Reddit posts made under the username P. Hustle. He described himself as a communist and a vegetable-growing, psychedelic-taking socialist. What a fun guy. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. November 2025 faced criticism again for saying he wouldn't mourn the death of Vice President Dick Cheney. February 2026 shared social media posts from a Stu Peters, a Christian nationalist and conspiracy theorist who mixes anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel, etc., etc. I mean, this goes on for a long time of him doing and saying some really wild stuff. We're going to get into more in just a second. Stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're talking about Graham Platner up in Maine, kind of going through his scandal-ridden past. And the reason I'm doing this, this really isn't a moral thing for me. At the end of the day, this is just kind of a, hey, look and point and laugh at the Democrats because they're being, frankly, kind of stupid. all of this stuff that's coming out about Graham Platner, all of these controversies and things, this stuff is not hard to find. That's why the Republicans found it. The number one rule of politics is find your problems before the enemy does and get out ahead of them. Does that mean not running because you've got too many problems? Maybe. Does that mean saying, hey, look, this is my checkered past. I'm putting it all on the table because I believe that my potential constituents deserve the truth, whatever. Graham Platner didn't do any of that. The people that vetted Graham Platner didn't do any of that. And this guy has got tons of problems that need to be addressed, especially when the Democrats nationally are running a high and mighty campaign, a moral high ground campaign. This has been the whole thing in Texas. They've been pointing at Ken Paxton and his sexual scandals because he has his own sexual scandals. It appears that so far, nothing we've heard about Ken Paxton has been actually illegal. He cheated on his wife. You shouldn't do that. That's bad. They're getting a divorce. Okay? What else? What else do you have? Nothing. But that's been their attack line here in Texas. And they've applied this at a broader level. Constant attacks nationally at the entire GOP. Look how immoral these people are. Donald Trump has had 3 divorces. Ken Paxton has now had a divorce. We're the morally pure and uprighteous Democrat Party, and we always take care of women. And then you look at Graham Platner, and as it turns out, actually that's not even kind of true, and you knew it the whole time. So what are you doing? It's political malfeasance. I have an incredibly low tolerance for just plain good old-fashioned stupidity, and that's what this looks like to me, is just plain stupidity. There's no reason this guy ever should have made it past the vetting process for anyone of either side of the aisle that's even slightly intelligent. But anyway, the Platner scandals, kind of going through these just to show how problematic this candidate is. May 2026, the Wall Street Journal reported that Platner's wife, Amy Gertner, told aides shortly after the launch of his campaign that he had sent sexually explicit texts to several women early in their marriage. Gertner, who married Platner in 2023, 2 years after the alleged rape, said she confided in the aide who later leaked the story because she considered her a friend. Democratic senators met privately with Platner in Washington and pressed him about whether new allegations would emerge. The candidate reportedly told the senators, "It's not a secret. I've had a messy, complicated life. The worst of the rumors we've all heard are not true." Less than a week after the sexting revelation, this is June 2026, the New York Times published a story in which 3 of Platner's former girlfriends alleged toxic or volatile behavior. Now, if Platner had any common sense, this would have been about the time that he would come forward and say, hey, this also happened, allegedly. But he buried that. He actually not only buried that, he went out and said, hey, yeah, this is the worst of the worst is already out. I have nothing else to hide. He said this in an interview. Check this out.
But the GOP is going to dig up everything and more that they can.
Yeah. And probably lie at some point. I mean,
is there something new you want to get ahead of?
No, I mean, like I've lived my life. I've been there for the whole thing. And
but the GOP is going to dig.
I've lived my life. I've been there for the whole thing. There's nothing I want to get ahead of. Are you sure about that? Are you sure? But you're sure there's not one teensy little thing that you might want to just give people a heads up about? Apparently not. So you really have to wonder, how did this guy get to the point where he's running for Senate? Because as much as we all like to think you just put your name on the ballot and then you win, it's really not that. That's not reality. Usually you get recruited by a group, by a pack, by people who think you would make a good candidate, and they'll say, hey, we've seen you here and here. We think you could do this job. We're going to vet you first, and then we'd like to put you forward as a candidate to run in whatever primary. That's usually what happens. Usually, that vetting process, just as a matter of common sense, is pretty extensive. Because again, like that lady did accurately point out, your opponents are going to dig through every single thing they can find to attack you on. Now, it's worth pointing out, this most recent rape allegation did not come from the right. The woman who's making these allegations, as I understand it, is actually a Democrat. She's a leftist. But she's still making these allegations, which I think lends some credibility. But beyond that, you have to wonder, how in the world did he get past just the first round of vetting? Because all of this stuff was easy for the GOP to find. Well, that happened because apparently it was only 3 days long. That's how long they vetted Graham Platner. 3 days. So according to Fox, Platner's 3-day vetting job comes back to haunt Dems as rape allegation rocks Senate bid. Platner's $6,250 background check, missed rape allegations, a neo-Nazi tattoo, and deleted Reddit posts. So basically, every single scandal he's had didn't even come up in the vetting process. Now, normally, if you do a proper political vetting process, you're going to find stuff, and maybe that's stuff that sinks your campaign before it begins, but also maybe that's stuff that you just say, okay, well, we're going to have to get out ahead of this. We're going to have to come up with some explanations. We're going to have to come up with some talking points so that when this is inevitably brought up, we're ready for it. But they weren't even able to do that because they didn't know about anything, apparently. That's what it looks like. Democratic operatives reportedly commissioned a brief, low-cost background check on Graham Platner before launching his Senate campaign, a decision that appears to be backfiring. No kidding. Listen, anyone in politics will tell you, you can't cheap out on this stuff. When you're doing a political background check, you, especially for a big seat like a Senate seat, there's only 50 of these. Anytime anyone runs for Senate, you're going to become a national story. Because there's only 50 senators nationwide. So you got to be careful. You got to pick the right people. You got to make sure you're ready to run this campaign because you're going to throw a lot of money at it, a lot of time, a lot of efforts. You cannot go half-cocked. And that's exactly what they did here. It's exactly what they did. And yet he's still insisting that, you know, he's fine. He's a fine candidate. Now he has said, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to observe and just kind of figure things out. I predict that he will drop out. But this raises the question for the Democrats. Okay, that money that you've already spent running Graham Platner, that's gone. You're not getting it back. That's wasted cash now, officially. Secondly, you've only got a few months before the election. So you're going to have to, in those few months, distance yourself from Graham Platner, who's already won the party's nomination, put up another candidate, get people familiar with that candidate, convince them to vote for him or her, and then hope you win the election. And that entire time, the incumbent, Susan Collins, a Republican, is just going to sail to victory. I mean, this is just ridiculous. If the GOP doesn't win this race going away, I mean, Lord knows what we're doing. Because the Democrats are almost doing everything they possibly can to hand the midterms to the Republicans, which on paper, the Democrats should win. That's typically how things go. The party in power usually takes a hit during the midterms. I think the GOP actually has a chance at gains in the Senate, if not also the House, only because the Democrat Party is so terrible at this. And that's what we should be expecting of the Republicans, by the way. If you're a conservative, if you're a Republican like I am, you should be demanding from the GOP absolute victory because there is no excuse. The Democrats have no policies to run on. The candidates that they are putting up are communists and or allegedly rapists. This should be an easy election for us to win. All right, this has been the Next Gen Report. I'll see you Sunday, 7 p.m. on terrestrial radio, AM 950 KPRC. Tune in.